I think it's fundamental to understand what are the skills that is missing in people in culture that you really need to embed. We hired a consultancy specialized in service design to help us map the whole journey of Nubankers and help us identify what are the key pain points from the employee perspective. And then based on these pain points, we started our journey. So we organized multidisciplinary people to work on these pain points. So instead of me training myself to become a product manager, I decided to hire a product manager to be part of my team and to really help me and challenge me in thinking through the problems to be solved in a very different way. We started about 12 months ago. The other leaders are already starting to see the positives of this new way of working.
Welcome to the Work for Humans podcast. This is Dart Lindsley. Nubank is the largest digital bank outside of Asia, and it is one of the fastest growing companies in the world, recently passing 119 million customers. Nubank got there by being absolutely customer obsessed. Chief Human Resources Officer Suzana Kubric is on a mission to bring that same customer obsession to HR. In today's episode, we go deep with Suzana and her Senior Director of People Journeys and Culture, Jessica Matsumoto, as they rebuild HR to become a product team, mapping employee journeys, uncovering pain points, running experiments, iterating quickly, and learning from every single try, all with the goal of making work better from the inside out. In this episode, I talk with Suzana and Jessica about what it means to design HR as a product, the surprises that they've encountered, why Nubank brought product managers and designers from other disciplines to lead the effort, how employees and leaders outside of HR are responding, and how to lead an organization as it goes through this kind of transformation. All right, as always, subscribe so you never miss an episode. And now, here's my conversation with Suzana Kubric and Jessica Matsumoto. Suzana Kubric and Jessica Matsumoto, welcome to Work for Humans.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation, Dart. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to have you both on the show. And we have a lot of theorists on the show. We have a lot of different people who come on to Work for Humans, but not as many practitioners, people who are on the front lines getting it done as we could. And so that's absolutely who you are. You are on the front lines. You are transforming an organization, an HR organization, and you're transforming it in a product direction. And so there's a lot of people who are going to want to hear about that journey and about what's hard, what's great, what's working, what's not. So let's start with Nubank. Let's start with your context. What is the business context in which you are transforming your HR organization?
So Nubank is a Brazilian fintech. It's one of the biggest fintechs around the world. We are present in Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. We have more than 100 million clients. So it's been a hyper growth and a very exciting journey so far as a company. The environment here is very good for us to test and experiment things. And that's why we are able to practice. What does it mean to do people and culture or HR as a product in this organization?
So let me say something about Nubank, because depending upon where you are in the world, you either know everything about Nubank or you've never heard of Nubank. Nubank started in Brazil, has spread to most of Latin America, and it is perhaps the largest fintech outside of China in the world. And so it is a incredibly successful, especially for such a young company. And so it's a thrilling space to be in. First of all, Suzana, how long have you been with Nubank?
4 years. I started in March 2021 in the middle of the pandemic.
Jess, how about you?
3 years and a half, a little bit later than Suzanne I joined. I was actually, I think, her first recruitment.
And you both came out of what I believe are more traditional HR approaches. How would you describe those, especially as a compare and contrast to how you're approaching it now?
The more traditional organizations, they see people and culture and HR more as a support function and not in the center of the business, really influencing the direction, not only about talent, but also on org design and other very important aspects. And there is less space to test, learn, experiment, challenge the status quo, and try to do like really extraordinary things. These are the main differences that I see from a more traditional organization versus what we experience here at Nubank.
And I would imagine that comes from a couple of different places. One is they might be not as young as companies. They might not still be in a growth mode and experimenting. And I can't remember if they were tech or not. It depends, right? So you're both saying no, not particularly. So you're in a space where there's an opportunity to experiment. Why did you decide to take a product approach to HR? And what does that mean? What does that even mean?
What we are trying to do here is to master an employee experience as Nubank masters in customer experience. So the purpose of Nubank is to fight complexity and empower people to simplify their financial lives and to really make the most out of it. Our purpose here in People and Culture is to fight complexity and empower the new bankers that are our employees to do the best job of their lives and make really extraordinary things. Adopting the product mindset in PNC is helping us to transform the way we make decisions and how do we set priorities, being much more user centric. So it's an outside in approach, starting from the user perspective and from a real pain point to then solve the problems and come with solutions. And this is very inspired on how our business work. We pick up a very important pain point and try to find a simple solution for it. So our first card, the Roxinho, that is a credit card that helped to bankerize a lot of people across Latin America, is a simple solution. Like you open an app, you apply for the card, you get a credit limit, and then you can start using it. So we want to do the same thing with our HR or PNC solutions that normally are a bit time consuming, energy draining, processes that people don't understand why they exist, what kind of problems they are solving for. So this was our inspiration on the business and what we are trying to do with the product methodology and mindset inside People and Culture.
If I can add on that, I think when Suzana and I started talking, we were reflecting about how well succeeds Nubank in terms of really meeting the customer needs, right? And if you think about some years ago, it would be unimaginable that a bank would have a fan club, right? Customers that really love a bank, that wouldn't be something possible to think about. And then we were thinking on what do we have that is so special in a bank that makes us being able to do that? And why don't we use the same magic to HR, right? And to people. So we're not reinventing the wheel really, but we're actually learning from within and learning from what we already know how to do for the end customers to end users, which are our employees.
I want to highlight that point. Nubank has a fan club. Can you describe that fan club a little bit?
Since we started, we focused a lot on brand positioning and to have a lifestyle brand and not really a bank brand. So the purple color is something that's not common or not used to be common on banks in the past. And we wanted the customer to be very close to Nubank because the purpose was to simplify things for them, like to fight complexity. So with this relationship, without a lot of small letters in the contracts, gotcha movements that normally banks do, we were able to really strengthen this relationship. And then the clients created a fan club that's called New Community, and they cheer for Nubank. So every time we have a new product launch, we do with the new community first. We have them very close to us on product development because they act as a voice of the customer on everything that we do. Not only that, but it's really amazing to see how much love they have for Nubank and how they express this not only in the interactions with us, but on social media and through other channels.
What are the 5 values of Nubank? And do they inform how you think about your own function?
Yeah, this was something that I really wanted to talk more about because I think the 5 values are the core elements that enable us to do what we are doing inside people and culture and that drove Nubank's success so far. So they were developed by the founders in the early days of the company. And we have 5 values. The first one is we want our customers to love us fanatically. So everything is about the customer. It to solve real pain points. The second value is we act as owners, not renters. So all new bankers, our employees, their compensation package include stocks. So they are really owners of the companies, and we want them not only to look of their own function, but to look at the company as an owner and to step up and help decisions to be made in a very strategic way. We are hungry and challenge the status quo. Like nothing is impossible for Nubank. So we set very high targets, and it's okay to miss. It's better to shoot high and miss than shoot low and hit. So it's the first company that I work for that if you have a scorecard that is all green, it's not something that it's well seen, it's well perceived. We want to have half-half. We want to hit half of our targets and miss half of our targets as a signal that we are really, really shooting high. We build strong and diverse teams. We don't have a predominant function or job family here at Nubank. So it's a community of engineers, product managers, designers, business analysts, and many other functions. And they have equal voice on the company and on the product development. And ultimately, we pursue smart efficiency. So one of our key competitive advantages is we are a low cost provider and we can pass this value or this savings to the customer in the way we price our products. So these are very strong values that also inform our journey inside people and culture.
Oh, it's so interesting.
Nubank was the first Latin American unicorn, and this also opened a huge avenue for venture capital and other startups. We are also very admired by venture capital and startups because they look at Nubank as a pioneer on this field.
I think there's something very telling here, which is consumer banking has been around. It's not that the market you're in is new. Like a company comes along, like Google creates search in a way that in a new area. So it has a first mover advantage and it goes forward. Nubank came into a space that's quite mature and rocked it and did it with these values, which is we want our customers to love us fanatically. We're hungry to challenge the status quo. We're owners, not renters. We build strong and diverse teams and we pursue smart efficiencies. And those are the principles that made that possible. I want to ask about the point of hungry to challenge the status quo. Now, sometimes that can mean we're hungry to challenge the status quo when it involves our traditional customer, people using our banking products. But it doesn't always translate into permission for functions like people operations to challenge the status quo. Do you feel like that pervades the whole culture and it includes you?
Yes, yes. Even our risk function is hungry and challenge the status quo. Of course, taking calculated risks. I will tell you an example. We have here a channel. We use Slack as a communication tool, and we have a channel here on Slack that was opened by our founder that's called Bureaucracy Buster. That we want all employees to act as owners. And if they see a bureaucracy that is getting in the way, they go there, They articulate the problem. If they have a suggestion for a solution, they suggest a solution. And then we should pursue that path to simplify, to challenge the status quo, to do things differently. So on this channel, you can see a lot of suggestions regarding functions like people and culture, finance, legal, and other more back office functions that are challenged to do things differently. So instead of waiting others to point out how we can reinvent ourselves, we want to take this step forward and this leadership and go and do things fundamentally differently for our own function. So there is a space for us to innovate and to do things in a different way.
When did you decide that the product approach was right for your organization? And Suzana, I'm assuming that it was soon after you made that decision that you hired Jess. So we're going to follow that path. When did you start to think that way and why?
It was very interesting. As I was saying, we were observing what the business do. What's the magic behind what we are able to do with our customers? And then when we dig into what the teams do, it's really about how we manage our products. Obviously, with all the 5 behaviors and 5 values behind, but really digging into the real pains of the customers and working hard to really make fundamentally different solutions, especially fundamentally different solutions from the competitors and things that are really going to solve the problems. So when Suzana and I started understanding and talking to the business leaders, we understood that it was about the way the Nubankers manage the products. And then we were thinking, why not bringing this methodology into people and culture? So that's why we started with the product management approach.
So it's super interesting to listen to your language. First of all, we had Marty Kagan on the show, who you both know about, who's one of the world's leading experts in product management. And one of the things that he discussed at length was the problem when product teams forget what they're for. And they're about execution, not solving problems for their customers. And so the number of times that you have said, solve problems for customers. And every time you've said that, you've implied that employees are the customers. Was that a leap to start presenting yourselves to the rest of the business as having a customer in employees and solving problems for them?
Totally, yes. I think it's about talking the same language as well. So it was easier at some point to adopt this methodology within people and culture, because basically what we were doing was learning from them, right? So when we were talking to the business, it was easier for them to understand what we were doing. And actually, when I started this journey with Sue, I got a mentor from the business, right? Someone that really understands how to do design and service design and product design, and was helping me and challenging my thinking in terms of how can we really apply this into people and culture, and how do we adapt the concepts and the methodologies, considering that we have internal users and not real customers that are actually paying for the service. Obviously, we can do this parallel that I do know your concept in terms of work as a product, but we know that there are some differences in terms of the real customers and the internal employees. But yes, it was easier for us to talk to the leaders and to sell the vision, if you like, because they already know what we do for end customers. So we were just basically getting what they do in terms of methodology, right? And learning from them and trying to adapt to our internal lenses, really. Because what we were doing basically was moving from projects to solutions. So instead of, oh, okay, I have this thing to do, right? Because someone told me that I have to do. And then I deliver, and then, okay, let's move on to the next project. We're moving to solutions, which is, okay, what are the problems that we really have to solve for the business and for internal users? And how are we going to really understand if we're solving the real pains? And how do we keep constantly measuring, iterating, and ensuring we are really solving those problems? So I think It sounds easy to say, but it's a fundamental change in terms of how we organize ourselves, how we measure our success, and how we really focus our efforts.
You're making a distinction that Marty Kagan makes as well, which is he would call just project execution as the measure of success a feature factory. And he would compare it to organizations that are passionately aligned to solving the problems of their customers. How did you organize your product line? So, how did you break up your world into products? So now you've got this large function, you're going to be product oriented. How did you break up the function to identify what the products were?
One first important disclaimer is we're still in the journey, right? We're not there yet. How did we start it? We hired a consultancy specialized in service design to help us map the whole journey of Nubankers and help us identify what are the key pain points from the employee perspective, from the internal user perspective. And then based on these pain points, we started our journey. So we organized multidisciplinary people and multidisciplinary teams to work on these pain points. So we selected the top 3 pain points in different stages. So some pain points were bigger in terms of number of people that were impacted. Other pain points were like smaller in terms of people that are impacted, but we saw a huge value in terms of experience. So because we were in this experimentation, we selected 3 pain points that were a little bit different for us to test. And then we organized the teams towards that mission. So what are the key people and the key knowledge and expertise that we need to be able to tackle those problems?
What are some examples?
One example that we can talk is the new break, which was the period of time that people leave, either on maternity leave or vacations, but usually like more sick leave and maternity leave, the longer periods of time. This is a good example because when we selected, we understood that not all Nubankers go through that, but those who go through that, it's a really pain and it's really meaningful. So we saw a good opportunity for us to work on that and really provide superior experiences for those people that go through this period of life that we know that is very tough when you come back and when you go. And it's very measurable as well. So this is one of the examples that we got. The other was much more broader, which was the pain from managers that they were saying that they don't know what is expected really from them. They didn't feel confident enough to manage people. So this is another thing that we needed to do a big discovery in terms of understanding what exactly do they mean when they say, I'm not confident. Is it because they don't know what is expected from them? Is it because they don't have the skills they are required to do? Or they don't have the tools that they need to do? So this was a broader problem that we selected to tackle and that the teams invested a lot of time.
I like those. One of the things I was listening for is, and I think this about a lot of product management approaches, is that they are often about solving problems, but I worry that they're going to miss opportunities. Things where there may not even be a service to have a pain point yet. There may not even be that thing. And so we can't get a signal of a pain point from something that doesn't exist yet. But it sounds like, for instance, that's not so much in the new break projects, but in the manager one, you started at such a fundamental level of not knowing the answer that you might identify opportunities as well as problems. The problem was we're not confident, but the answer to that problem might be lots of opportunities. So that's very interesting.
Yes, and I think one thing I think it's important to mention, one of the main things that we did was in that I think is fundamentally different from what I heard from my colleagues in HR that I've been talking a lot with my colleagues during this journey. The key thing that we did very differently was about the skills that we brought to the team. So I heard a lot of people doing this type of transformation in HR, but trying to do it with HR folks, right? So they separate the teams into different groups and organize them into squads and start training them and reorganizing the way they work. But one of the first elements that we decided to do here was to bring some expertise from the business to people in culture. So instead of me, let's give my example, training myself to become a product manager, I decided to hire a product manager to be part of my team and to really help me and challenge me in thinking through the problems to be solved in a very different way. We also brought a designer to the team because we had a lot of discovery in the beginning of the journey. So people who really know how to do it, right, for end customers and trying to apply here internally. And this was fundamental to our journey, very important. I think this is one of the key things that if I could give any advice for companies that are starting in a journey like that, I think it's fundamental to understand what are the skills that is missing in people in culture that you really need to embed to make this happen. And now, what's very interesting, we started with one designer and one product manager, and now we have 12 or more than that, even more than that, spread across people in culture. Because after a year of this journey, because we started about 12 months ago, the other leaders are already starting to see the positives of this new way of working. And then they are starting to bring and they are perceiving the value of having different skills into the mix of their teams, which has been very interesting.
And you're speaking about in the people function.
Correct.
If I can add on what Jesse is saying, I think it's also very connected with our value of build strong and diverse teams. And also, if we want to master in employee experience as we master in customer experience, it's important for us to import this expertise from the business. So some of these skills are just talent we hired externally through the same talent bar we do for the business. But some of them we brought from inside Nubank, product managers, designers, and engineers. And I'm very proud to say that nowadays, 15% of our people and culture function is comprised with talent from tech functions. And this help a lot on the mindset, on the way of working that we are trying to implement and do currently.
There are some different mental models that go with product design and service design. And Jess, you had mentioned product and service. Can you describe the distinction between the two and when you might want one versus the other?
Listen, I'm someone from people in culture. I'm not an expert, but I'm going to tell you what I mean when I say that. What I mean when I say service is to start thinking about the whole ecosystem that involves the product. So sometimes when we started talking about product in people in culture, people were thinking about their own product. And when we started pushing for service, it was more about how do you retrofit your strategy? If the user doesn't understand how to use your product, where do they go, right? We have Ask People function, which is basically our tier 1 support for no bankers. And most of the product managers within people in culture didn't even know the data from there, right? What are the key questions that people don't understand my product? Why are people using that much or asking so many questions? So this is what I'm pushing for when I say service mindset. It's more about not only look at your product, but look at the whole cadence, like the supporting of your product. How do you sell your product? What are the channels that are going to deliver your product and that the new bankers are going to really be in touch and consume your product? So it's more about that. So for some people that are more experts in product, probably this is only product mindset. But when I was mentioning service, this is what I meant.
On Work for Humans, we've been exploring the principles of multi-sided management, which is the belief that work is a product that every company designs, builds, and delivers to employees. Along the way, people started asking how they could put these ideas into practice. So I founded the work design firm 11fold to help your company create the kind of work that makes teams feel alive and engaged instead of dead and dull. So you can reduce turnover and build commitment. We're doing something revolutionary here. Learn more at 11fold.com. That's 11fold.com. Suzana, you're winning budget for this, and you're arranging budget to make it happen. Did you face doubters? How did you address the doubt, if you did? And are you seeing tipping points where people really, and I'm not talking about the people function, I'm talking about the business functions starting to recognize what you do? I know it's early days, so you may still be in the what are you doing again phase, but how's that going?
It's early days, and here at Nubank, we have a lot of autonomy to run our own function. So budget was not a constraint. Although on the other side, I was bringing efficiency inside our people and culture team, introducing automation, AI. So I was gaining efficiency. I have not increased headcount to do that. So I've been decreasing headcount with the gain of efficiency. And this gain of efficiency is funding the ability of us to experiment, bring different talent, different skills, and to play in the sandbox with the product mindset and mentality. Something that's being recognized from the business is that in a good product management, you are based on data, on evidences, and you have metrics for your results. And we are being much more disciplined about that inside people and culture. So we do a discovery, we have evidences, we test with users, we have an MVP, we measure Chanel's score, then we find product market fit, then we do a rollout. That's not a big bang, doing the rollout for the entire company at the same time. Then we measure results. We have metrics. Then these retrofeed into the product design and the improvements that we are going to do. So it's been good because people are very vocal here at Nubank and they challenge everything we do all the time. So when they come up with a question or with a challenge, we are backed up with data and with metrics. And this is in fact helping us with our credibility of people in culture in front of the business.
There was an interesting point in that story, which can potentially be a trap. And I've seen it happen a lot in people functions, which is that the people function says, look, we want to improve the experience of the people who work here. And whoever's allocating budget says, yeah, that's a really good idea. You should do that, but no additional budget for you. You're going to have to fund that with cost savings. Well, cost savings can be hard. And so you spend a whole year doing cost savings to actually create the budget to do the better experience. But then the next year, it's the same thing. And so it sounds like you have enough space, I guess is the right word, to do them concurrently, not sequentially. So you can get more efficient while at the same time investing in better experience, not having to wait until you can prove the efficiencies.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Dart, one very interesting thing that happened that I think have higher chances to make it sustainable, this transformation, is because, yes, we do have a central team that is a small team that is under my leadership, which we call as PNC3D. This team is responsible for providing the tools, advise the teams, onboarding the new product teams that come into the people in culture function to ensure we're all aligned. But we already started this movement, as I said, from other leaders within PNC, that whenever they have opportunities, someone from their team leaves or they have a new role in their teams, they are starting to bring and replace these roles. Instead of replacing for another HR role, they're replacing for a product manager, a designer, a business analyst, depending on their needs. So we are now already seeing this talent mix transformation across people in culture. It's not only a project anymore, it's becoming more natural that those type of skills or type of talents are already being embedded across people in culture, which I think it helps in these transformations. For example, if Suzana, for some reason next year doesn't have funds anymore, the whole leadership team is already funding themselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
And Dart, if I can add, the call for efficiency is something that we do frequently because we pursue smart efficiency. So, irrespectively of our product journey, I was already doing that, trying to be more efficient as a function, introducing more technology, more artificial intelligence, and so on. What I did is that I used a spare part of this budget that I was saving to fund a couple of additional talents that were focused on putting the project, I would call the project in place. We run as 6 months as a project where we did the first journey mapping, started to select the experiment, starting to do a change management on the mindset inside of people and culture. And like after 6 months, these people that were dedicated for the project were fully embedded on existing functions, already owning, implementing this new methodology as product as their day job. So it's not additional, it's just changing the way we work. And another aspect that I would like to call attention is we are seeing this transformation based on three pillars. There's a triad of things that we are doing. That is the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set. So in the mindset is everything we do should address a pain point, either an employee pain point or a business pain point. Like building a new org design, it's probably not an employee pain point. There is a business pain point that will drive the need for a new org design. Like it's starting with the problem, getting in love with the problem and not with the solution was a very important change on the mindset that we did here inside of people and culture. The second part of the triad is the skill set, as Jesse already articulated very well, multifunctional teams, a lot of product engineer, designers, business analysts, expertise, and organizing them on squads. They're owning the product and the solution. We experienced some setbacks there because some of the multidisciplinary teams were done of people that were not fully dedicated. They had their attention spread. So let's say it was this product was not their day job. It was a second thing that they were doing, and that did not work. So we found out we need squads with people dedicated to the product and the solutions. No. And the third aspect is the tool sets. So we created a lot of artifacts and a governance in place to make this a reality. So what do I mean about that? I mean that we started to have product reviews inside people and culture. We were on the product reviews of the business where people really challenge the solution. It's a chat and bring other alternatives for the solutions. And we imported this practice and we now do with our PNC products product reviews. We also created the habit to have the PDR, like is the description of the product in detail to create the documentation and be able to continue the evolution and the product development and improvement over time. And there are other several artifacts that we incorporated in this journey of treating our problems or our products or our solutions inside PNC with this new mindset and with these new skill sets.
I like the term squads. It feels like something that can be formed and is cross-functional. I mean, at least two of the issues that you've discussed, let's take management confidence. Bit of backstory. We have a lot of listeners who are not in people functions. And so a little backstory for people not in people functions. There are some products inside people functions that can stand alone. And then there are other experiences that are actually large collections of services that need to come together for a moment and make it happen. And so onboarding is an example of that. Everybody in the company has to be involved in making an onboarding experience work. It's not like a product. It's a bunch of components. And actually, a little more backstory for people who aren't in people functions. For the last, since about 96 anyway, most HR functions have COEs who design processes, who design people processes. Has service, which is essentially call center services, HR support services, and has consultants who consult the leadership about their people strategy and those different ones to work together. Where does COEs, and COE stands for Center of Excellence. A Center of Excellence might be, we're the world's leading experts in performance management, and we're going to advance this process over time. Where does COEs fit in to the direction that you're going?
So I will start with this one. And the answer is we don't know. So this is where we are exactly on the journey, because we are running our model in parallel with the traditional HR model. So we have COEs, we have HRBPs, we have an HR service. The difference I think we have currently is our HR service also have a very important element of technology and analytics. So it's not only operations, but also technology and analytics. I think this is a little bit different from the traditional models in the market. And we are running this product experiment in parallel, a bit embedded, but in parallel. So for the new break product, this is inside our benefits COE, but with a cross-functional team. For the performance product, this is inside our success enablement COE. For the manager confidence is inside our leadership and culture COE. But as it's everything very interconnected and end-to-end, it's not a smooth fit. And we need to design a new organization and a new operating model if we continue pursuing this path. So currently, myself and my leadership team inside People and Culture, we are doing several deep dives and workshops to find an operating model and an org design that will help us to crack the code and really solve for what you really well articulated in your question. So in summary, we are still in discovery mode to find the best solution for that while we run these experiments with product inside PNC.
As you move toward that, one of the risks, products should be customer shaped. As you move toward a product organization, there can be a desire to make them leader shaped. In other words, the shape of the organization that they're coming from. It's a real challenge, which is, where did I see this? I saw this once where we were looking at benefits as a service and all the different benefits. Benefits is so complex. Oh, it's even worse in Brazil, because in Brazil, a lot of benefits are defined city by city in terms of what the law is. Oh my goodness. But anyway, we saw it as one service, one global service, but we'd organized it regionally. And so it was hard to talk about it as a unified service because it threatened each of the members who had ownership over a chunk of it. And it's not a question. It's one of the hard things. In fact, it's a hard thing in business all the time, which is, I think of dividing up the world into something like products. It's like using a cookie cutter on dough. You use the cookie cutter to do it, but then you end up with all this extra dough. Or if you don't want to have any extra dough, you have to overlap the cookie cutters, in which case you've got these overlapping responsibilities. It's just a very hard thing to do. And to go from one mental model around how you organize to a product model has to change all the cookie cutters, and it's hard.
Yeah. And it's been an interesting journey that the senior leaders inside PNC are bought in and really enjoying the ride. So I don't see a lot of silo mindset, protection. We are facing a lot of gray zones and ambiguity. And assuming positive intent, knowing that we are here to try, learn together, find a solution, do what's best for the employee and for the business. Everybody is open within a mindset. But it was a journey to get there, because in the beginning, some people felt threatened, wanted to protect their own scope. So it's a journey. What we are trying to do is, until we have what we are calling the HR purple model very well designed and crafted, we don't want to distract the rest of our people and culture organization thinking on what this structure or this operating model will look like. We want them to lean in the multifunctional teams, get in love with the problems, do discovery, learn the methodology, and really generate the impact we are looking for. No? And when we talk with people that are being part of this experience, in the beginning, they are a bit skeptical. They see this as additional work. They feel uncomfortable because they don't understand the artifacts and the methodology. But like 3 or 6 months later, when we look into retrospect, they say, wow, it was amazing because we spent a lot of time on discovery and data analysis. But when we did the solution and tested with the users, the feedback was great. And when we launched it, we did not have the backlashes we used to have in the past with all the HR solutions. No, we don't have a fan club yet, but we look forward to have an HR fan club in the future.
I like that as a metric. Trailing far behind banks in terms of lack of fan clubs is HR. So I think that's a great objective. So I want to talk about power. And the reason I bring this up, one is the traditional shape of people functions has been very crafted by who allocates budget. The people functions that survived were able to survive by serving people who allocate budget. And as companies got larger and HR departments got, more robust, universities got into the game and they started teaching HR professionals how to fit into a model that was built around the mental models of the people who allocate budget. This is my thesis. You can disagree with the thesis. But as a result, the balance of investment has been facing business leaders and the mental models of business leaders. And the balance of the investment has not gone toward the experience of people who work in the company. The balance of the investment historically has gone toward making people services efficient and not focusing on the experience. And so, how are you navigating the balance of investment between experience of the workforce and essentially the experience of leadership who might be allocating budget? Tell me, first of all, if you think that's a real dynamic. And second of all, if it is, how are you navigating it?
The way that I will articulate that is you can see competing forces, let's say the employee experience versus business results or budget. But ultimately, we strongly believe if people are here, committed, motivated, trying to do like the best job of their life, they will deliver more business results. So it's a flywheel. We need to focus on the experience of the employee for him to opt to be here, doing the best job of their lives, leaning in, delivering a lot of value that will culminate on business results, that will allow them to do the extraordinary happen, put a dent on the universe, transform the market, transform the category that we are into. So I think these things are very interconnected. If we see these as competing forces, we are not valuing the most important fuel of our engine, that are the people that work in the company. So this is the way that I articulate. What we need to avoid is overemphasizing the employee experience in detriment of results. It's not, I want you to be happy only because I want you to be happy. I want you to be happy because you will be willing to lean in more and deliver more business results. So you need to craft this experience in a way also that is not paternalistic and childish. We treat adults as adults. Doesn't mean that the employee is always right, as the customer is always right, the employee is always right. No, it's not what it means. No. And it's been a journey for us to find this balance. I can tell a little bit about like a project we recently did that helped us to find the right balance.
If I can add to that, Dart, I remember one meeting that we had with David, the leadership team of people in culture in David, and he drew a triangle with a heart in the middle, saying that we have to actually balance the business into three key stakeholders. So customers, employees, and shareholders. So I think this challenge that you're mentioning makes sense, but the business also faces that, right? Sometimes the customers call and want something that we cannot deliver because it's going to hurt the business. And if the business is hurt, we will no longer be in the long run. And then we're not able to support the customer in the long run. And then we're also not able to employ our employers. So I think it's a balance between these three stakeholders that we have to always have in mind. And all this journey that we have been through, we're all always reinforcing that as well. That at the end, we're all fighting towards the same direction, which is to solve better our customers, right? So I think this is something that we always have in mind in our business model.
Have you done any work around deciding which of the employee customers is critical path? In other words, I remember years ago, Starbucks, they were looking to invest in talent and they thought about focusing on leadership talent. And they decided, no, it's baristas, that the most important role in the company in terms of customer experience was baristas. And so have you thought at all about a segmentation of the customers that you're facing and how you might focus on one over the other?
Yes, this has been an ongoing discussion since we mapped the journey and we decided the problems that we will experience, the methodology. We always start the discussion thinking about who are we solving this for? Which are the personas that we want to solve this for? Because I can design a performance cycle that will solve for the manager, or that will solve for HR, or that will solve for the employee, or ultimately will solve for driving more business results, the senior leaders. So once we start discussing the solution, we focus on understanding who is the main customer and for whom we are going to maximize for the solution. Because there are competing stakeholders and competing forces. So we really need to make trade offs, and designing the persona is a crucial piece of nailing down the problem we are going to solve.
When you did define personas, was role, let's take all individual contributors, was role an important part of it? Or was it other kinds of personas like employees with kids or employees who like to work alone or some other angle?
I think there are two aspects of it. So, in the beginning of the journey, when we mapped the journey with the consultancy that I mentioned, we also mapped typologies. This is what we called. It was less about role and more about relationship with work, characteristics, right? Behaviors, different ways of seeing the world, let's say. And how does this impact the work? And then we understood that these typologies, there were four of them, were cross levels of seniority, cross roles. And if we decided to solve or build a solution that would solve for these four typologies, we would probably touch most of Nubankers. So this is something that we started. But yes, when we discuss in our strategy, in terms of talent strategy, prioritization, we do discuss what are the key groups that are more strategic or we can get most of in terms of leverage, that therefore we should focus first or should focus the biggest chunk of our work. So we use these two things, right? One is more for designing a solution, and the other is more for prioritizing our efforts. I'll give you an example of roles, tech roles, right? It's definitely something that is very critical for us, for our business sustainability. And when we say technical, we say, for example, engineers, product managers, right? So this is definitely one of the key groups that we always take special attention.
It's a good example. And so one of the questions is, we've had discussions about identifying HR services as products versus work as a product. And at this time, you're focusing on HR services. What constrains you, or what is the nature of the line for you? Let's take engineers as an example. I have worked at companies where people operations was marvelous and engineers were very unhappy. And they were unhappy because it was hard to get stuff done. It was the work itself that was actually the bigger risk. And so, where does that fit into your mental model? Do you think it's in the future? You've bitten off a huge thing to do right now, and so I would certainly understand, but I'm wondering how that fits in your world and how you think about it.
I like the idea of work as a product, but it's too broad. So we need to slice this in small chunks to be able to execute against that. What does it mean work for each employee is different. So we slice this through the journey, we identify the pain points, and we are trying to build solutions and products that will address the pain points, that will increase their experience, and then they can have a more delightful job. So the best job of their lives, the way that we are articulating here. The way that we are approaching this is we reviewed our employee value proposition in the past year because we found out that the way people were, the candidates, or even some employees were perceiving or were expecting Nubank as a work experience was different from what they're getting. And this was causing some frustrations in the process. So we wanted to recontract the give and get. So when you come to work here, this is what's expected from you to give. And when you come and work here, this is what are you going to get. So some people will be very excited that they will get a compensation above the market. Other people will be very excited that they will work with amazing talent and they will be able to learn a lot in the journey. Other people will be excited that you can challenge the status quo and you can experiment things and do things that in other companies you could not do. Other people will be excited because we have an extended parental leave and everybody, respectively of where they are in the world, men or women or different kind of couples, can have 4 months of parental leave in the first year of the kid. So we articulated a lot this give and get to recontract. So we can say that doing that, we are positioning work as a product because people can decide if they want to work here based on the value proposition that we are offering them. And something that I used to say very frequently is that we don't want to retain employees. We want employees to wake up every day and decide to come to work here and subscribe for the product, as Jessica Swan says. And this is also a way to position work as a product. So in the concept, we are aligned. But in the execution, we go a little bit deeper.
And the scope. And so that makes sense to me.
I agree with Sue that in the execution, we are slicing the problem, right? Because we are in this experimentation. And I think we are already starting to see some specific segments of our population as a whole. So I'll give you an example, managers. As I said, we got a very high level problem. And then when we dig deeper into the problem, why they're not feeling confident, we start finding a lot of things that are even beyond our PNC remit, right? Things that they experience their day to day. And then we prioritize where we want to start. So I think our strategy in terms of execution is being, let's start focusing on where we have more control and more autonomy to do, which is usually, obviously, the PNC world. But then I think when we start solving these problems, we will get into the broader aspects of the work. So in my view, I believe that this will be a natural step once we start solving the basic stuff.
There's an interesting thing in there, the idea of remit, which is who gives you your remit A. And if you're running across things that are problems that are not part of your remit, are they anybody else's problem? And so I'd ask that last question. When you come across those things that are beyond your remit, is there a natural owner? Yet.
I'll give my first view and then Sue feel free to add. I think depend on the problem. So I'll give you a very tactical example that's things that we discovered on the onboarding, which is an easy example to tackle. Part of the onboarding is the relationship with the direct manager, right? So if the manager is really doing what they have to do, and the dynamics of the BU in particular, that is very different because of the type of the work that they do or the type of business that they perform. And there's also the layer that is more federal level, which is the institutional onboarding, right? So we see that there are opportunities in all of the layers. So in the institutional onboarding, in the BU onboarding, which is the day-to-day and the interactions that this new hire has with the manager, and in the functional onboarding. We're starting with the federal level onboarding, right? So we're fixing things that are almost 100% in our power to do. So we don't have a lot of interconnections, things that we can quickly solve. And then obviously then we will need to go into the other layers. And then we need to interact with the function leads or with the BU leads. So it's something that we will get there, obviously, because when we look at the whole experience of onboarding, we cannot split that. But it's just how we're slicing the problem.
Again, I would go back to one of our values. We act as owners. If we see something that's not on our PNC remit, we find who is responsible for that and we contract. So, for example, one pain point was for senior leaders that the planning cycle was being a bit painful. So we go to our finance function and we talk with them, the discovery that we did and what's coming from the conversations we have. We offer them the data. We offer help. Is there anything in terms of comms, change management, leadership development that we can help? And then we do the contracting. Which part of the problem are you going to address? Which part of the problem we are going to address? And what's going to be above the line in terms of things we will be able to tackle now? What's below the line of things that are on the pipeline and we are not able to address now because we don't have capacity? So there is not such a thing of it's not my remit at Nubank. We act as owners. If we cannot solve it, we find a partner that's going to solve and we do the right contracting.
Excellent. You've heard the closing questions. I'm going to ask the closing questions of each of you. Suzana, what do you hire your job to do for you?
So I hire my job to give me space to experiment, to learn, to make the extraordinary happen, and to enable new bankers to have the best job of their lives.
Jess, how do you answer that question?
It's very similar. I think I hire my job because I have an opportunity to really challenge the status quo and solve a pain for the whole industry of HR. I've been working in HR for more than 18 years. I've been talking with a lot of friends. Everybody complains about very similar challenges. So I'm really invested on that. I really believe that this can be a way to solve this pain. And I think we have a good opportunity here to transform by doing the basics right and focusing on real pain points.
Suzana, what does your job cost you?
My job cost me time with my family. It's very intense and time consuming and energy consuming. So I think this is the biggest cost for me.
How about you, Jess?
It's hard to be the second, but it's pretty much the same. I think time definitely is the big thing, right? It's time with my little one, time with my family.
You know, I heard in both of you, in terms of what you hired your job to do for you, is to discover the unknown and to invent. There's probably some puzzle solving in there that you enjoy. And I also heard, and this is one of the things of puzzle solving, is that sometimes you're solving a local puzzle, but sometimes you're solving the meta puzzle, which is the puzzle that all companies face. And if you can solve a puzzle that all companies face, it's really exciting. And when something is that exciting, it's hard to divide your attention between that exciting puzzle and family. It's a very common answer that I get to this question, which is I hire my job to make money to take care of my family. And it also competes with family. It's a very hard thing. So I really appreciate you coming on the call today. It's a really hard thing to be a leader in a large company and speak publicly. And the larger the company, the more successful the company, the more constrained leaders can get in terms of their ability to speak freely. And I really appreciate that you came on today. You spoke freely about hard things where you don't necessarily know the next answer. And that's a part of the story. And it was a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. We are really, really excited with our journey. There's a lot of unknowns, but we are really, really excited with the journey. And if more people that are putting these concepts in practice can join forces and be able to reinvent the way we do HR, it will be great. We are looking forward to see the HR Purple model working, fully functional, and solving problems that we currently face.
Yeah, and we hope we can be here at some point to share more results about our journey.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Love to have you back and say, so now, it's one of those things where as you push a paradigm, as you push to transform a paradigm, at first, the existing system doesn't notice you. But then as you the more you get into it, some parts of it can start to notice. I've certainly seen situations where COEs became less empowered by a business transformation like this and later took it back. And so we'll talk again. We will definitely talk again. So thank you.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Dart.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Work for Humans. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. And share the show with one person you think would get value from it. Believe it or not, this really helps us grow the show and reach more people who want to build the kind of work that people really want. As always, thank you to my producer, Jason Ames at Ninth Path Audio for his insights into content and his high standard for quality. Final note, the opinions shared here are my own and not the views of Google or Cisco Systems. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.